Okay, so let's dive in. We're exploring that interesting overlap today between volunteering and tourism.
Yeah, this whole idea of voluntourism.
Exactly. And it raises some big questions, doesn't it? Not just about, personal growth or having a different kind of trip, but about responsible travel generally
Yeah,
and how we actually impact the places we visit.
for sure. And we've got some really helpful sources to guide us. There's a 2013 Deloitte survey looking at volunteering and jobs.
Okay.
Then a really detailed handbook on responsible travel from Washington State.
Right.
And also an APEC report that gets into best practices specifically for voluntourism.
So quite a mix. We're looking at it from the individual angle, like how can volunteering maybe help your career, all the way up to these broader destination level impacts, which can get pretty complicated.
Yeah, they really can.
So our goal here is to sort of pull out the key takeaways, connect these different viewpoints, and give you a clearer picture of what's going on in this space. Ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Okay, first up, let's talk about the personal angle. That Deloitte survey had some findings that really caught my eye.
Yeah.
This idea that volunteering, especially if it's skills-based volunteering, it's not just about doing good. It could actually be a strategic career move.
That's a key point. The survey basically suggests that if you volunteer using or even learning professional skills, it can act like a bridge, helping people find work or switch careers.
And the numbers seem to back that up, especially from the employer's perspective. Get this, more than 3/4 of the HR execs they surveyed.
3/4. Wow.
Yeah. They said they actually consider skilled volunteering experience when looking at job applicants. And they think it makes a candidate more desirable.
That's huge. I mean, the people doing the hiring really see value there.
Definitely. And it wasn't just the HR folks. They also talked to people actually looking for jobs.
Like students.
Yeah, college seniors and also military personnel transitioning out. And 9 out of 10 of them thought future employers would see volunteering at a nonprofit as valuable work experience.
Okay, so there's a strong perception from both sides, employers and job seekers, that this kind of experience matters.
Exactly. So if you think about it, volunteering, where you use skills like, say, project management or communications or teamwork or even technical stuff, it seems like it could be a real, tangible plus on your resume. Might give you an edge.
Makes sense. It's practical experience after all.
Right. So that covers the sort of individual career benefit side.
Yeah.
Now let's connect that volunteering idea more directly to travel.
Okay, so this is where voluntourism comes in, as defined in that APEC source.
Yeah, explain that definition a bit.
Sure. It's pretty straightforward. The combination of tourism being a tourist and providing volunteer services. Critically, these services are delivered free of charge at the destination.
And it can be short-term or long-term.
Exactly. The APEC source says it can range from just a few hours of work up to a whole year.
And this isn't some niche thing, is it?
Not at all. The source calls it a rapidly growing global market. We're talking over 10 million consumers every year. And the value is estimated somewhere between 1.7 and $2.6 billion annually.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So why are people doing this? What are the motivations?
Well, it seems like there's a real mix. The sources suggest people are looking for something, deeper than just a standard holiday. More authentic, maybe, more meaningful.
Okay.
So motivations could be pure altruism, genuinely wanting to help out.
The doing good impulse.
Right. But it also includes things like wanting deep cultural immersion, finding camaraderie with other volunteers or locals, education. And yeah, also that self-interest element we just talked about, like enhancing your career.
Interesting.
The APEC source even uses this phrase, describes some voluntourists as post-materialist, postmodernist, new tourists. Meaning people who value experiences more than buying stuff, perhaps, looking for something beyond just consumption.
That resonates. People want travel with purpose.
Yeah.
And the APEC source, it gives us a framework for thinking about the types of voluntourism, right? This shallow versus deep idea.
Exactly. From researchers Callan and Thomas, it's a really useful way to categorize these projects based on their focus.
So tell us about shallow voluntourism first. What defines that?
Okay, so shallow projects, according to this framework, are mostly about the volunteer's experience.
So the focus is on the person traveling.
Pretty much. Their leisure, their personal development, maybe getting a feel-good story to tell. These trips tend to be short, usually less than 3 weeks.
Okay.
They often don't require any specific skills, and there's usually minimal pre-trip training. The actual volunteer task can feel a bit secondary to the overall holiday.
Right. And this is where that term commodification of altruism sometimes comes up.
Precisely. The idea that the act of helping is being packaged and sold almost like any other travel product.
Okay, so that's shallow. What about the other end, deep voluntourism?
Deep is really oriented towards providing actual aid and having a tangible impact for the community.
So the focus shifts outward.
Completely. These projects usually need volunteers with specific skills or qualifications. They tend to be longer trips.
Makes sense if you need specific skills.
And they typically involve significant pre-departure training. Plus, there's a strong emphasis on really immersing in the local area, and crucially, the volunteer work is clearly linked to needs identified by the community, often with locals heavily involved in the planning.
And intermediate is just somewhere in between.
Yeah, falls somewhere on the spectrum between those two poles.
The spectrum is really important then because it highlights that voluntourism isn't just one thing. It covers a huge range.
Absolutely. From a quick trip where you paint a school wall for a day to maybe a year-long commitment using professional skills. Very different scenarios.
So while there's potential for good, especially at that deeper end, what happens when things go wrong? Or when projects aren't managed well?
Yeah, the apex source definitely flags potential downsides, unintended negative consequences. For the community, potentially the local economy, the environment, and sometimes even for the volunteers themselves.
Can you give some examples of those risks?
Sure. Things like inadvertently reinforcing negative stereotypes about the host community, or disrupting local routines because a group just shows up without good coordination. And then there's that big concern about volunteerists possibly taking jobs away from local people.
Right, the job displacement issue.
Yeah.
Though the source said the evidence for that wasn't conclusive.
Correct. They noted they didn't find robust evidence of it in their research, but it's definitely a hot topic and a real worry for host communities.
This seems to connect to a bigger point from that Washington State handbook, doesn't it? But how we think about tourism success overall.
Exactly. They make a strong case that we need to move beyond just measuring success by growth.
Meaning just counting heads or dollars.
Yeah. Purely looking at visitor numbers or tourism revenue, it misses a huge part of the picture.
Why is just focusing on growth a problem?
Because growth, if it's not managed really carefully, can cause a whole host of problems. Think about like overcrowding at popular sites.
We've all seen that.
Right. Increased pollution, huge problems with waste management, pressure on water supplies.
Things locals need.
Definitely. Plus, inflated living costs driving residents out, general dissatisfaction among locals about tourism's downsides, and serious environmental damage.
The Washington source even had that example about parking near trails blocking emergency vehicles.
Yeah, a very practical, real-world consequence of poorly managed visitor numbers.
So these impacts really hit home for the people living there.
They do, and the Washington Handbook uses this really powerful term to explain it. The invisible burden.
Invisible burden. Tell me more.
The idea is that tourism relies heavily on shared resources, what economists might call common pool resources.
Like beaches, parks, cultural sites.
Exactly. Natural habitats, cultural assets, public infrastructure like roads, water systems. But the cost of using these, maintaining them, or the negative impacts when they get degraded, that cost often isn't fully captured or paid for by the tourism industry itself.
Ah, so it becomes a hidden cost, a burden, carried by the community or the environment. It doesn't show up on the tourism business's balance sheet.
Precisely. It's invisible in the traditional accounting, but very real for the destination's long-term health.
That makes so much sense. And it underscores why just managing the impacts is as vital as trying to attract more visitors. It's about sustainability.
Absolutely. It's about ensuring the place itself remains healthy and livable.
Which leads us nicely into the whole concept of responsible tourism. The Washington Handbook really pushes for this, right? Calling for a reset.
Yeah, they talk about building resilience, creating a more balanced approach that tackles those negative impacts head on while still trying to get the economic benefits.
And they highlight some key areas for development. What were those?
Well, a big one is cultural competency, and DEIA, that's diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility.
Okay.
It's about fostering awareness and empathy, both within the tourism industry and among visitors, to make places genuinely welcoming for everyone.
So thinking about diverse groups.
Right. Indigenous communities, LGBTQ plus travelers, people with disabilities, different cultural and ethnic groups, everyone.
And they mentioned the tourism workforce itself often lacks diversity.
Yes, that's flagged as a challenge. And they also stress language. Going beyond just English is crucial for truly connecting with local communities and serving a wider range of visitors.
What about accessibility for people with disabilities specifically?
The handbook is pretty frank that Washington State has improvements to make there. But they also note growing interest and point to positive examples like Visit San Juan's providing accessible info and the nonprofit Disabled Hikers offering guidance.
Good to see resources emerging. And environmental stewardship was another big one.
Huge. This covers actively cutting greenhouse gas emissions decarbonization, aiming for net zero, and importantly, moving past just relying on carbon offsetting as the main fix.
So deeper changes needed.
Yeah, and practical stuff too, like managing that congestion in parks we mentioned,
Right.
promoting local food, which cuts transport emissions and helps local farmers and businesses,
Makes sense.
and thinking about the circular economy, reducing waste, reusing things, managing resources better overall.
And the last key area you mentioned from the Washington source was indigenous engagement.
Yes, and this was framed really strongly. They emphasized that in Washington, the 34 distinct indigenous peoples and tribal governments are rights holders, not just another stakeholder group.
That's a critical distinction.
It is. It means genuine engagement is essential for getting approvals, understanding potential impacts on culture, land, water, everything. They point to resources like AIANTA and ITBC guidelines for how to do this respectfully.
Okay, so DEIA, environment, indigenous rights. It's clear that making tourism responsible, or making voluntourism responsible, takes conscious effort on many fronts.
It absolutely does. It's not something that just happens.
Which brings us to the how. What strategies do the sources suggest for actually making these changes?
Well, both the APEC source and the Washington Handbook really stress the need for intentional planning and collaboration.
Okay, starting with the APEC source on voluntourism.
A key message there is that projects need to be planned with communities, not for them, with them.
So communities as active partners.
Exactly. Ideally, in the driver's seat, deciding what's needed and how help is delivered, not just being, passive recipients.
That seems crucial for genuine impact.
And they also mention transparency about money, knowing where the funds are going is vital for assessing if a project is actually effective.
What about the Washington sources approach? More big picture.
Yeah, they talk about destination stewardship planning. This is about balancing the economic goals with environmental protection and social or cultural well-being.
And centering the residents.
That's the ideal, yes. They call it place thinking, focusing on the health of the place and its people, not just the destination as experienced by tourists.
How do you do that in practice?
It involves strong policies, clear action plans with actual steps, and crucially, being willing to question and even dismantle old ways of doing things that aren't sustainable, rethinking the whole system.
That sounds like a major shift.
It is. And one interesting idea they mention is using different lenses when you plan any tourism activity, including voluntourism.
Lenses like what?
Like applying a climate lens. So you'd ask, how can we encourage group transport? Can we source food locally?
Okay.
Or apply a DEIA lens, asking, are we working with diverse-owned businesses? Have we consulted accessibility experts? Is our marketing inclusive? Is information available in multiple languages?
So it's about consciously building these considerations into the design from the start.
Exactly. Not just as an afterthought.
What about the people working in tourism? Workforce development came up too.
Yes. There's a need to upskill the existing workforce for these new sustainable practices, and also to tackle labor shortages by attracting more diverse talent, by valuing a wider range of skills, not just formal qualifications. Things like communication, cultural awareness, problem-solving, resilience. The source mentioned a Canadian hotel that started hiring people with skills learned in tech, for instance.
Interesting. Thinking outside the usual box.
Right. And underpinning all of this strategy is data. You can't manage what you don't measure.
So tracking the impacts.
Absolutely. Environmental, social, cultural, economic impacts. You need baseline data. Where are we now? And then ongoing monitoring to see if your strategies are working. They suggest using existing data sources first, if possible.
And finally, what about rules and regulations, especially for voluntourism?
The APEC source flags this as urgent, particularly for those high-risk areas.
Like working with children or in healthcare.
Precisely. They stress the absolute need to ensure volunteers have the right skills and are properly supervised in those settings. They admit formal accreditation is complex and costly, but they emphasize the need for integrity and safety standards. And they also note that sharing best practices and lessons learned across the sector is vital, but often doesn't happen enough.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground here.
We really have.
It feels like this deep dive shows tourism and volunteerism within it is, well, it's really complex, isn't it?
Definitely. There's potential for good things, individuals learning skills, maybe communities getting targeted help.
But also real risks. And those invisible burdens you talked about, if things aren't planned and managed with real care.
Yeah, intention seems key. Understanding why people volunteer the whole spectrum from altruism to self-interest. Knowing the difference between a shallow tourist-focused trip and a deeper community-focused one.
And seeing why that bigger picture planning the destination stewardship that centers residents, environment inclusion is so vital.
It helps you be a more informed participant, right? Whether you're thinking about taking a trip yourself or just how tourism operates in your own backyard.
So what kind of questions should you be asking if you were looking at a volunteerism opportunity, for example?
Good question. You'd want to look past the marketing, wouldn't you? Try to figure out who identified the need for this project. How involved is the local community? Where does the money actually go? What are the qualifications required? What are the potential impacts, positive and negative?
Requires a critical eye, for sure.
Definitely.
So, summing up, we've seen how skills-based volunteering might give your career a boost. We've explored the nuances and the potential downsides of volunteerism.
That shallow versus deep spectrum.
Right. And we've looked at the broader push towards truly responsible tourism strategies needed to make sure benefits flow to communities and the environment, not just visitors or businesses.
And that shift in perspective thinking from the place outward, centering the residents.
Yeah, that feels really important.
Right.
So maybe here's something to leave you thinking about. Okay,
Yeah.
given everything we've discussed, the mixed motivations of travelers, the complexity of impacts, those hidden costs, whose job is it, ultimately, to make sure this desire to do good through travel actually leads to genuinely good, sustainable results for the places and people involved?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Is it the traveler's responsibility, the organization selling the trip, the local hosts, the government or destination managers?
Or does it have to be some kind of partnership with everyone playing their part?
Feels like it has to be, but making that work effectively.
Yeah.
That's the challenge.